On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks are down, battered, hurt, injured. What are their wishes for Christmas? And what can we look forward to the Mavericks the next couple of weeks? We'll talk about that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. Where the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, leave a 5-star review, like the video, and comment anything below. Let us know what should be the Mavs' biggest wish for Christmas this season. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use that code LockedOnNBA for a full deposit match up to $100. And joining me, you hear her before, in the middle, and after Mavs home games and games. What you got for me, Dana Larson?
4 shopping days left, or depending on when this airs, maybe even less.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're listening to this episode late, you have less time.
You have even less than that. That's right. You ready?
Have we reached the window yet where you can't do online purchases anymore because you can't trust them? Like
I think so.
You're brick and mortar right now. If
I
you're
think
listening to
you're
this,
brick
and
and
you haven't bought stuff yet.
Or full freak out mode as I'm approaching.
You've got to make the trek to North Park and try and figure out how to make it through the crowds there, probably. Oh my goodness.
The massive humanity that will be inside that building. It's fun. It's all part of the fun, right? The holiday fun.
The weird thing is you got to do that part kind of by yourself because you're buying for other people and you don't want anybody else to see. And so
that's true.
It's a weird thing where like all the lead up to Christmas is solo and then Christmas itself is like everyone together.
That's right. Then we do all the returns together. All the things we got wrong, we do with everybody that we got it wrong for. Yes.
That is funny. I saw somebody on TikTok have this say, we should change it up, where I think it was Elise Myers, where she said, everyone should buy themselves a gift and then bring it wrapped up. And then you open it in front of everyone to see, like, this is what I got. Like, this is what I got myself, to see what everybody's like interested in or wants this year.
That's a great idea. I'm all for that. I want to get it right because I don't want to spend the next 2 weeks undoing all my mistakes.
Speaking of undoing mistakes, the Mavericks have dropped some games recently, and a lot of it has been, some of it has been self-inflicted. A lot of it has been because of injuries and other things. And so we thought we would take this episode and look at what would the Mavericks wish for Christmas this season? What do they want to get from Santa or the basketball gods that they wouldn't return the next day, right? They wouldn't be like holding the gift receipt and waiting to come back. And so we'll each share a bunch of things that we think the Mavericks would wish for Christmas. And let's start here, Dana. Can they get healthy? I mean, it's time to talk about that because a lot of these games I start going through, I did the whole breakdown of the Mavericks losses to good teams recently. And like half of those I would look at and say they were just missing good players.
Mm-hmm. Totally agreed. I mean, this is Captain Obvious, of the top of the wish list, but it really is true. And it's a bummer because everybody, with the way the season started and they were really good and you couldn't wait for all these measuring stick games, right? I can't wait to see them go up against Minnesota. Can't wait to see them go up against the Clippers on a hot streak. And it's just not fair. They're a shell of themselves right now, and you're asking Luka to do even more than he has done. You're asking guys to do even more than they are typically asked of. So I think that's the disappointing thing. And to me, health right now, if you're asking, Santa, get us healthy, I think you just hope that you get one of the 4 guys back by Christmas, and you'll feel like reinforcements arrived. Every one of these 4 is, an important part of this thing. And 2 are starters. Kyrie, obviously the second leading scorer, and Dereck Lively. Those are 2 of the 3 most important guys on your team. And you're having to play all these huge games without them. So I think right now, to me, can we just get one, preferably one of the 2 starters back by Christmas? If you could see Kyrie and there is some Some, I guess you're hearing that a little bit, that's a possible. Lively, who you've really heard very little about, 0 timetable, and you see him in a boot and that never sounds good. But I do think the boot is a real precautionary thing.
He wasn't in it last night, though.
And so that's all. Those are good steps forward. I don't know if he'll be back by then, but I mean, really and truly, yeah, you just want to give them a chance because it's not getting any easier anytime soon either with the schedule.
It's not, and the schedule's going to get tough. I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's just go through the injuries real quick because I want to just I just want to just like recap where we are with these guys, how long they've been out, and how long they were expected to be out. Because I've seen a lot of frustration. I heard frustration from some Mavs fans last night that I talked to at the game. Why aren't they telling us things? Why? Sometimes they don't know these timetables for guys. But let's start with Dereck Lively. He's been out the least. He has a left ankle sprain. His last game was the 16th, so he's been out for 5 days. So it's really not a lot of time.
Right.
And then on Wednesday, before the Clippers game, Jason Kidd said there's no timetable for his return. I kind of wonder if that's like we're gonna hold him for the Christmas game, but that's like an optimistic. That's an optimistic like look at that. So that's where Dereck Lively is. Kyrie Irving has been out with a right heel contusion since December 8th. So he's now been out for 2 weeks. And on December 12th, so like a week ago or so, Kidd said there's no timetable for a return. He's not in the walking boot anymore. And so that's been positive. He's been on the bench. He's been, he's walking around. He's like getting into huddles. He's been involved for sure. And so that's one that you look at and go, okay, maybe it depends on where the status of his foot is. But that's where Kyrie is. With Josh Green, he's been out with a right elbow sprain, and this is one where I think he's got to be close to returning. They had the poster night for him last night, like he was on the poster they gave out to everybody, and you would have hoped that he would have come back then. But he's been out for 3 weeks, and on December 5th, Shams Charania reported that Josh Green would be out, quote, the next couple of weeks. And so it's been 3 weeks since then. And so you're like, okay, he's around where at least they prognosticated that he would be returning for Josh Green. And then the last one is Maxi Kleber. He's been out with a right small toe dislocation. This one is the confounding one that I don't think any of us really get. He's been out since November 11th. November 8th. And then he had like November 11th where he had that weird, like he came back for 15 minutes.
Right.
So he's been out for like 7 weeks or 6 weeks since that last game that he played. And on November 11th, Kidd said he'll be reevaluated in a couple weeks. That was over 5 weeks ago that he said he'd be reevaluated. So apparently the evaluation didn't go well with Maxi, and he's just been out.
And, it was tough enough to have Maxi out in the depth at that center position and then Dereck Lively. So you're really thin and you're really small. I mean, Dwight Powell, is starting games right now. And I thought it was so funny that they were saying we went small in the second half when basically you had Derrick Jones Jr., Grant Williams playing that center position. You're small when it's Dwight Powell, and you were going even smaller, as they went into that second half against the Clippers. So they really are. That position is tough. They would love to get bodies back, get some minutes back there. It just changes, the trajectory of everything defensively and also what Luka can do on the offensive end.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, you had Maxi and Lively playing like all 48 minutes of your center spot. And now that's been gone now for at least the last like 2 or 3 games. With Maxi, he's been gone even longer than that. And so you've just been missing those guys for a while. That's a really hard injury to try and overcome. And Lively, too, the Mavs are 0-4 when he doesn't play. And they did win that game against Portland where he went out in the first 6 minutes, but he still played and they won. So I don't know. It counts for the stat, I guess.
Yeah. We can make a stat sing however we need it to, can't we?
that is correct. Just put the filters on in a certain way, and I can turn it to make it.
Well, and the good thing is they're not going back to Portland because that is where all bodies seem to fall for the Mavericks. I mean, that's where Kyrie got hurt, and then their next trip back to Portland, that's where Dereck Lively got hurt. And I mean, I guess it was just a Christmas miracle. Nobody else was added to the injury list last night. Because at this point, you are just so concerned about who's available night in and night out. They can't afford to lose anybody else. They really need to just feel like reinforcements are on the way. I even think if there was that vibe, it would be helpful because if you're just trying to survive and you keep seeing the magnitude of opponents, that you're facing night in and night out, it can really start to get you in, in kind of a dark place about where you're at.
Yeah, you go from Christmas to Krampus, right? You go to like the horror version of it. It feels like that's the Mavs' first wish for Christmas is to get healthy, to find health. One of those 4 players. If you had to make a guess, which one of those 4 players comes back first?
Gosh, I'm going to say Kyrie.
Okay.
I am. I just have that. I have a sense that the amount of time that he's been out with the injury that he had, that he can get back first. I'm worried about Dereck Lively needing a little bit more time.
Yeah, the ankle sprains are tough. It depends on what the level is, and the Mavs have not been super forthcoming with what it is, but maybe we need to get Brian Suter back on and talk about some injuries and what those mean. But coming up, let's get into some more things that the Mavericks would wish for Christmas. Can they get Luka any help, or can they at least get him some rest? We'll talk about that and explain why maybe not. Coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Betterhelp. Betterhelp is the place where you can go and talk to somebody. Everybody has moments in their life. I'm going through a situation in my life where I'm just so thankful to have a therapist, to be able to talk to somebody in my life that doesn't have to answer to both sides. They don't have to talk to both, they don't have to talk to the person I have an issue with and then also myself. And like, they don't have to mediate in that way. They just can talk you through your side of it to figure out, how am I feeling? How am I going through this situation? How am I responding to this situation? It's so helpful, and you can do it entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. And if you're worried about what type of therapist you're going to get, or if that person, you're going to vibe with that person, or if you're going to, do well with that person, you can switch at any time, and they totally understand it. There's like my sister-in-law is a therapist, and she says there's just this feeling out period where they expect you to try somebody else. And if you don't vibe with that person right away, then you don't want to like share all your secrets with them and do all that. So that is something you can do with BetterHelp. Again, visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA, betterhelp.com. Go talk to somebody at betterhelp.com.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is?
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. Appreciate each and every one of you. Appreciate your support for the show. Go check out our Locked On Sports Today live stream, the Locked On Sports Dallas stream. I pulled it up today to see who was on there, and it was me. And it was me and Slightly for our episode from last night. They've got new stuff. If you want to sample some of the other Dallas shows, when I finished the episode last night, I think Locked On Baylor was on there. We obviously got Locked On Cowboys, Bryce on Locked On Rangers. You got Locked On Stars. We got all those things covered. So check out the Locked On Sports Dallas live stream on YouTube or on Fire Stick TV. I think they're on right now. All right, Dana, the next wish for the Mavericks after health. Actually, I want to talk a little bit more about health. There's one more thing I want to talk to with that. Health is hurting them in more ways than just they don't have talent, they don't have guys on the court. The Mavericks right now have one lineup, one 5-man lineup that has played 100 or more possessions. I thought about this because NBA University posted a list of like the top 5 lineups in the NBA, and they did a minimum of 200 possessions. And I went back and I was just like, let me just do a minimum of 100 possessions. The Mavs only have one lineup like that. They only have one lineup that has played like 200 possessions or so. Here's the other one of the teams that are 16-11. So their record is 16-11 or better. They're better right now. So the good teams in the NBA. Here's where their most used lineup is for each of these teams. OKC, Boston, and Milwaukee each have a lineup that has played 500 minutes. So more than double the Mavericks' most used lineup. Denver, the Clippers, the Sixers, the Knicks, the Kings, and Orlando all have lineups, sometimes some of them more than one, that have played 400 minutes. So double the Mavericks' most used lineup. And then Minnesota and the Pelicans each have a lineup that's played 300 or more possessions. 100 possessions is essentially one full game. Let's just say that they played a full game together. So the Mavericks, with this health issue, they just haven't been able to get any of their lineups to play together and be cohesive. And these are all like basically new players that have been playing together. And that one lineup that's played the most together is their starting lineup with Luka, Kyrie, Derrick Jones Jr., Grant Williams, and Dereck Lively. And they've only played 200 possessions together. And they're losing those minutes right now, but they haven't been together enough to try and play through some of that and trying to work through some of it. The health is hurting them in more ways than one.
Boy, I mean, that even, give them credit for their record, considering what you just
Honestly.
said, right? Because it is so difficult to play with, in rotations that you're not familiar with guys that you don't just have that eye contact with to know where you're going to be. The good news is, and I think a lot of that is credit to Luka, because I think you could put me on the floor with Luka and he'd find a way to make me look
I
like
would get
a
an
good
open three.
basketball player.
I don't know
Right.
that I would put it down,
That you
but I
would
would
drain
get
it. Yeah, maybe. So I think that, I mean, that's just a great point that you're making about the things that they're having to deal with, and they've been remarkably resilient, and been able to probably take advantage of that during some softer portions of their schedule. Unfortunately, against these really, you just listed everybody, a number of them they've lost to, and all of the good teams in the West, right? So that consistency is a huge part, especially at the end of games.
Huge.
Yeah.
The other thing about that is the Mavs only have one lineup that's played more than 100 minutes. These are the only teams, or 100 possessions. These are the only teams that have one lineup that has played more than 100 possessions. The Rockets, they've had one, but the one that they've had has played 767 possessions together. That is like 3 times what the Mavericks lineup has. The Thunder, we mentioned them before. Cleveland only has one, and that they've played about 300, so still like 33% higher than the Mavs. And then Memphis has only had one lineup, and they're terrible and have had a ton of injuries. So the Mavericks have not even had like multiple lineups that have played a bunch together to get any kind of cohesiveness. They've been throwing guys in, and some of that is Jason Kidd experimenting and trying new guys, and the emergence of Dante Exum and Derrick Jones Jr. and all that. But man, having these injuries to where it doesn't just affect your main lineup to try and get them like cohesive. It's everybody together. There's been no lineups that have really found any kind of rhythm, it feels like.
Well, and on the bright side, I think with that sort of tinkering isn't really the right word, but trying things that Jason Kidd did early, he did discover, 2 really important guys who look like they're going to be a big part of things going forward in Exum and Derrick Jones Jr. So there's a positive to come out of that. And then hopefully, if you can just get healthy, you'll start to get some of those, more minutes together.
Another wish for Christmas for the Mavericks is rest for Luka. Can they get any kind of rest for Luka since December 1st, Dana?
Well, and this is like health is 1 and rest for Luka is 1A. These go hand in hand. Because at the beginning of the season, when everybody was healthy and Kyrie was out there, you could get more minutes for Luka on the bench. Right now, though, he is having to be otherworldly. He is having to do things. He's averaging 37 minutes a game right now. That is on pace to be a career high for him. And for years we've talked about how high his usage rate is, how high his minutes are, and this is already off the charts. So I thought we really started to see it. He is in the best shape of his life, and he's playing his best basketball. But for the first time, I thought maybe in that Clipper game, you could really start to see the wear and tear. You're seeing him miss shots that were automatic. Some of his bread and butter shots, some of the mid-range stuff, he's in the restricted area. He's so efficient around the rim. When those didn't go down, it was shocking against the Clippers. And for him to start 2 of 9 in the first quarter, to finish 9 of 25, 36% from the floor for Luka was the second lowest field goal percentage of his season. And then to miss the free throws too. I thought that might be another place. He missed 6 free throws, I think it was, in that game.
Yeah.
And in a game you lose by, 9? Those things matter, but they're basically asking Luka to score 30 or 40 every night, and to make every shot, and to make every free throw, and to make every play to keep you in these games. And how are they going to find a way? Like Jason Kidd said, the issue is we can cause a problem when he's off the floor. We can't cause a problem when he's off the floor. We're trying to find somebody who can, but it's hard when we're built around Luka. Well, so there you go. It's hard to ever pull him out of these games because he gives you a chance to win. So it's not an easy. I don't know. Wish it for Santa. There may have to be some creative things because the schedule doesn't exactly allow for that either. You've got Houston and San Antonio. maybe those are 2
Back-to-back.
games, but it's a back-to-back. Maybe San Antonio, they could be out front and not play a fourth quarter. They essentially play every other day too, and they've got 2 back-to-backs after Christmas. It's an intense schedule that there really doesn't feel like it lets up till January.
It's tough. Luka, since December 1st, has played 40.4 minutes per game. That's number 1 in the NBA. He's averaging 25.3 field goal attempts per game. That's number 1 in the NBA since December 1st. And he's played 9 games, and 10 is the most that any one player has played in the month of December so far. And so, he's, like you said, he's got this incredible workload right now. And the schedule, they're about to play starting on the Houston game, 5 games in 7 days, and 7 games in 11 days. They literally only have 3 days off in the next 11 days after this, including playing on Christmas, 2 back-to-backs, and both of the backbacks in there, Houston, San Antonio, Cleveland, Minnesota, are both travel back-to-backs,
right.
And these have been really, really tough.
The worst kind,
lot of teams.
Right. Super hard. There's no practice time, which really, I think, affects the Mavericks defensively. Usually, if they can get a practice in, you really notice it in the next game. There's no practice time. There's no rest time. That's why if you can just brings me back to the health. If there is even just a little bit of a sign that reinforcements are on the way and they just need to survive some of this, maybe he can dig deep and, go full throttle to try to keep their heads above water right now.
That's the next wish, is can they get Luka any kind of rest or reprieve at all? Can they beat some teams to where he doesn't have to play the fourth quarter like he said? Coming up, let's talk about what other wishes the Mavs should have for Christmas. A role player needs to start hitting his threes again. And there's a young player that I think needs some more time that we saw last night. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. All you have to do is go to prizepicks.com, pick the players, and pick the more or less on the projections for what they think that those players will score or rebound or assist or throw or hit or, kick, whatever it depends, because they got NFL, NBA, NHL, college football, soccer, all kinds of stuff like that. Boxing. They even have like esports and cricket and all kinds of different stuff. You can go to Prize Picks right now, and they've got this special right now. Kevin Durant, more or less 0.5 points. So if you think he scores at least 1 point against the Mavericks on Christmas, you win that one. So hit more on that, and then you have to pick another one. So let's say I pair that with Giannis against the Magic, 31.5 more or less. Give me less on that one. I don't know why I'm feeling less. Paolo Banchero against the Milwaukee Bucks, 21.5. Oh, give me more on that one. If I put down $20, I can win 100 on that if they all hit. And you can combine that with NFL and or NHL or any other kind of stuff that you want to combine it with. Go to prizepicks.com. And if you go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, use that code LockedOnNBA, the first deposit match that you make will be matched up to $100. You put down $100, they match it. So go to prizepicks.com and play against the projections and not against the experts. Prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, Dana, we're looking at the Mavs Christmas list, making their list, checking it twice, gonna find out who's healthy or who's on the injury table again. We talked about health for the Mavericks. We talked about rest for Luka. What's another thing the Mavs should wish for Christmas this year?
I think, tis the season for parties, right? So how about a little Hardy party, a holiday Hardy party? We got to have a little bit of that last night against the Clippers, and to see Jaden Hardy come in and contribute was great. Right now, they really need some help off the bench. They're, for the beginning of the season, the bench was an advantage. Their depth was an advantage. Right now, they're looking at Tim Hardaway Jr. to give them 20 every single night. They need more because Exum's in the starting lineup. They really need. So for him to give them 15 like he did against the Clippers and to hit 5 threes, those were big buckets. They were, momentum shifters. And I just feel like it's so hard for a young player to do what he is trying to do. And I'm hopeful that this stretch where he is going to get more consistent minutes will really help. because, in talking to Devin Harris, who's the analyst with us on the postgame show, he was saying, we're all told we got to be pros, right? You got to be ready. You got to be a pro. That is one thing when you have done it year after year after year and you know what that takes. But when you are a young guy who doesn't know when you're going to get your minutes, he doesn't know where you're going to get your shots from, how many shots you're going to take. You may take one and you're out the rest of the game if you don't hit your first bucket. How do you find a way to not let the frustrations set in? And I really thought Jaden did a great job in that game against the Clippers and could be, super important if he can have confidence in his shot. He always talks about confidence. And if they could get double digits for him on a more regular basis, if he could earn a little more trust, earn some more minutes to miss a couple of shots, but be able to get in there and work it out. It's nice when you're one of those guys that gets to take 20 in a game, right? And you can miss a few, but when you're going to get only like 3 or 4 in a game, and he got 13 the other night, that was a lot for him. That can go a long way.
It really could. And he is in a real hard spot because I don't think he gained enough trust to be another ball handler. And so they've basically said, all right, you can shoot whenever you want as long as you've got space. You could totally tell that in that Clippers game. He's got space. Gets the ball, space in front of him. Take this shot, like throw it up there. He went 5 of 9 from 3 in that Clippers game. He went 5 of 7 against Memphis the other night. And you see that, but he just hasn't added that extra, like, get to the basket, do something with the ball. It's just been a little too shaky. It hasn't developed as well as we had hoped. And it kind of started with that summer league where he was disappointing in that. It felt like he lost a lot of momentum there, where if all of a sudden in summer league he looked really good, and then in training camp, and he could have been building on this, but felt like he either took a step back or wasn't exactly where the Mavericks had hoped that he was going to be at this point. But they could use a player theoretically like him right now, like you said. They could just use somebody to come in and get a bucket. Like, they cannot afford to have Luka sit on the bench very, very often right now. And Kidd is trying the Exum, Hardy, Tim Hardaway Jr. lineup when Luka sits, because he just said there's no other offensive lineup I can throw out there that gets anything going at all, really. And so I don't know I don't think they can get Hardy more minutes right now. He'd have to change like what he's been so far this season to get him some more time. But he's shown flashes here and there.
And they clearly wanted to go to him over Seth Curry.
Yeah.
Which tells you that they want to give him an opportunity. And I think, if he can that is the thing. It's, as everybody said, it's a make or miss league, right? And for him, it is go put the ball in the basket, score points for us, hit those open shots. And he did in that game and against the Clippers. And I think, that could go a long way for him going forward. And they just need, I guess, to hope that a few more minutes he can continue to develop.
The other one that I think that the Mavs should wish for is for Grant Williams to get his groove back, to get his 3-point shot back. Grant Williams, before I'm going November 19th, it feels like there was a cutoff where it just feels like he's lost it. That was close to where he said 60% is not good enough for me. Remember at the beginning of the season, he was like, I want to hit 100% of my threes. And I kind of believed him at that point. Before November 19th, he played 13 games for the Mavs and shot 48% on almost 6 threes a game. That was huge for the Mavericks. They needed that desperately. Since November 19th, he's played 11 games and he's shooting 27.8% from 3 on about 5 per game. And that includes the Lakers game where he went 5 of 7 from 3. And so that number, if you take out that outlier game, is even worse than that. Grant Williams, if they can get his 3-point shot back, that would go a long way to helping some of these offensive issues too.
Well, and you don't want to be the guy at this point that is being, like Jason Kidd says all the time, our offense is our best defense.
He's right.
Well, if you're Grant Williams, you're also bringing defense to the table, right? So you have got to, he really needs to be doing both. Defensively, do you feel like he has been bringing as much as you would have hoped?
I don't. Like, I had hoped that he would be a fringe, like, maybe not elite, but like really good defensive player. And there are times when he's definitely helpful on defense, and I would say he's good on defense, but he's not like fringe elite where I thought he would take this next step. Now it's only been 26, 25 games or so with him. And so, but he hasn't been that level to me where I'm like, okay, this is an answer for the Mavericks. He's been helpful. And I feel like the Grant Williams, Derrick Jones Jr., Exum type lineups, like those have been really, really good to see the switching and to see all that together. But he hasn't like been a huge answer for the Mavericks in that area.
I'm still very much willing to give him, a lot
Sure.
more time. This was, a guy that was really looking to elevate his role in the NBA, to go from being maybe a bench guy into that really starting rotation player who could lock down, defend, and knock down threes for you. And maybe that isn't something, that just happens overnight. He's a guy that works. We know that. He's a super smart guy who probably, if he can get out of his own head, will find his way back into, hitting a lot of shots. Because if you're a thinker, and, I can speak from experience, overthinking is never good. And I'm sure it's not good when you're playing in the NBA. I think it's, Derek Harper who always says, think long, think wrong, right? On the broadcast. Like, so for him, and he was really frustrated recently with his shots not going down. He was pretty vocal about that. I really think it's a matter of time for him, hopefully, because obviously they signed him to play a really big role on both ends.
They have, and he's been, I think he's still been fine. He's still shooting like 40% from three for the season. Like these things are going to happen.
Right.
The streakiness is going to happen. We've seen it from, if you go back to where Reggie Bullock was at this point last year, who Grant Williams is essentially replacing, he was shooting like 30% from three overall at the beginning of the season. So it's definitely different than that, but hopefully Grant Williams gets his 3-point shot back, gets his groove back. That's what we wish for the Mavericks for Christmas. Let us know in the comment section what you think the Mavericks should wish for Christmas this year. We will be back tomorrow on the Friday game against the Rockets. We will be back for the Spurs game on Saturday. And then, of course, on Christmas Day, we will have an episode after the Suns game that is late. So stick with us. Locked On Mavs. Subscribe wherever you get your shows. And go check out the Locked On Sports Dallas 24/7 stream on YouTube or on Fire Stick TV or on News On or all those kind of good apps. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.